The necklace caught the spotlight as Evelyn, Harper's grandmother, stepped to the podium, regal and unreadable. From the shadows, Harper watched, uninvited and unwanted, her name nowhere in the program. "I stopped funding in gratitude," Evelyn said. "Legacy belongs to those who earn it." Gasps cracked through the ballroom like glass breaking. The applause wasn't just loud, it was final. And Harper, her only grandchild, knew this was her public erasure and Evelyn's final, flawless revenge. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The sun was too bright for late October, washing the church lawn in a pale glow that flattened everything into glare. Evelyn squinted behind her tortoiseshell sunglasses, hands folded neatly in front of her navy blue dress. The hem brushed her calves just so. Timeless, modest, the kind of thing she'd worn to baptisms and graduations and her late husband's funeral. She stood in the back row of the wedding photo lineup, 2 steps to the left of center, 1 row behind relevance. "Grandma, can you tilt just a bit more? You're in the edge of the light." The photographer didn't wait for her to respond. He simply gestured to a spot between a potted mum and an elderly uncle Evelyn had never met. She adjusted without complaint. In the front row, Harper, her granddaughter, glowed beneath a lace-trimmed veil, lips glossed in a color Evelyn used to call apology pink. Beside her stood Noah, tall and tanned, gripping Harper's hand like he'd just signed a lease on it. The new in-laws, the Chenots, were front and center. Mrs. Chenot in ivory silk, Mr. Chenot with a cashmere scarf thrown over one shoulder, indoors. "Big smiles now," the photographer called. Evelyn smiled, though not big. Just enough. Enough to not draw attention. Enough to vanish with grace. As the camera clicked, Harper leaned ever so slightly toward Evelyn, tilting her face without turning her body. Then came the whisper. "Don't look so poor." Software breezy, coated in laughter. Evelyn's smile held. She didn't flinch. But inside, something glass-like cracked and didn't shatter. Not yet. The photo was snapped, then another. Evelyn took 1 step back as a bridesmaid in sequins slid into her place. No one noticed. Later, in the reception hall bathed in chandeliers and judgment, Evelyn sat at table 9, just beside the restrooms, just far enough to be missed by the champagne toasts. Her place card read, Mrs. E. Whitaker in plain serif font. The Chenots' table had gold leaf. Evelyn's napkin was paper. A waiter passed by with shrimp crostini. He paused. "Ma'am?" She waved him along. Across the room, Harper beamed under a cascade of fairy lights, clinking glasses with relatives Evelyn had never met. The DJ played an acoustic cover of something unrecognizable. People called it tasteful. Evelyn called it forgettable. Her hand brushed the lapel of her dress. No brooch. Harper had asked her to keep accessories simple so nothing distracts from the gown. Evelyn had obeyed, left the pearl choker tucked in the velvet-lined drawer where it had sat for over 40 years. Next to it, the necklace, the real one. The one her husband had once whispered would change everything when the time is right. Evelyn took a sip of water, not wine. Across the table, an aunt asked politely, "So how long have you known the bride?" Evelyn blinked. "Since she was 2 weeks old." "Oh," the woman said, embarrassed, looking down at her phone. It wasn't personal, Evelyn knew, just the speed of the modern world, the casual speed at which women like her became invisible. She watched Harper float across the dance floor, now posing with Noah's college friends, laughing with an ease Evelyn had helped build. Not through charm school, but through math tutors, doctor's bills, endless laundry, and one punishing year where Evelyn worked 2 jobs just to cover ballet tuition and braces in the same month. The violinists began their final set. Evelyn excused herself quietly, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders as she stepped out into the chilly evening. She didn't look back at the hall, didn't need to. Instead, she imagined her husband's voice beside her. "She's made her choice," he'd say. "Now you make yours." And for the first time in years, Evelyn knew exactly what she was going to do. The necklace wasn't going to sit in a drawer anymore. The door clicked shut behind her with a heaviness that didn't match its weight. Evelyn stepped out of her shoes, unhooked the clasp of her shawl, and laid it carefully over the back of the living room chair. The silence inside her home was thick, dense with memory, not loneliness. It greeted her like a coat she hadn't worn in a while, familiar, slightly stiff, but still hers. She walked to the hall closet, reached for the small step stool, and pulled down the cedar jewelry box that hadn't been opened in almost a decade. It was heavier than she remembered. She carried it to the kitchen table like it might break if disturbed too quickly. The latch gave a dry click as she opened it. Inside, nestled between yellowed velvet folds, sat the necklace. Gold and emerald, Art Deco in its bones, delicate but unmistakably expensive. It had once belonged to her husband's mother, passed down with reverence, and kept for a future moment that always seemed too loud or too much or too soon. She had never worn it, not to Harper's high school graduation, not even to Harold's funeral. It had waited, silently, like her. She picked it up now, cold at first, then warm between her fingers. The gems caught the kitchen light and fractured it across the linoleum like stained glass. A memory bloomed behind her eyes. Harper, 5 years old, covered in finger paint, sitting on a plastic stool beside her. "Someday," Evelyn had whispered then, "this will be yours." Then the orthodontist bills came. Then the mortgage refinance. Then the scholarship that didn't cover textbooks. Someday had become a safety net. Then a museum piece. Then a secret. But tonight, Evelyn didn't put it away. She laid it gently across the kitchen counter and reached for her phone. The appraisal office picked up on the second ring. "Yes," Evelyn said, "I'd like to schedule a valuation. Personal item, yes. Jewelry." The woman on the other end asked her name. "Evelyn Whitaker," she replied. "And no rush, just next available." The next morning, she sat across from her financial advisor, Jim Lyons. Clean-shaven, always too chipper for fluorescent lighting. He skimmed her file with practiced care. "So, you're reallocating some non-liquid assets into potential open market value?" Evelyn gave a small nod. Jim looked up over his glasses. "Not judging, just, this is a big shift. And your current beneficiaries? Well, Harper's still primary, unless you're considering changes?" "I'm considering clarity," Evelyn said. "And no, I'm not in crisis. I'm in control." Jim tilted his head. "You've always been conservative with your holdings. May I ask what changed?" She folded her hands neatly in her lap. "Someone reminded me I've looked poor for too long. I figured it was time to look like the one who paid for everything." He chuckled, confused, but he nodded. After the meeting, Evelyn stepped out into the crisp fall air. The wind tugged at the collar of her coat, but she didn't reach to fix it. She let it blow. That night, she stood in front of her full-length mirror, necklace draped across her neck like it belonged there all along. It didn't shout. It whispered, "You've always had the worth. You just stopped asking to be seen." She didn't wear it out. Not yet. But she didn't lock it away either. Instead, she placed it in the black velvet travel case that sat on the edge of her dresser and zipped it closed with the kind of finality that's really just preparation. Outside, the moon broke through the clouds like a verdict. Evelyn opened her closet, pulled out the silver clutch she hadn't used since 1998, and slipped the necklace inside. The next event wasn't on the calendar, but it was coming. And this time, Evelyn wouldn't be at the edge of the light. She'd be the reason people turned their heads. The brunch was hosted at the Aldridge Club, the kind of place with crystal water pitchers and employees trained not to make eye contact unless invited. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. The room smelled faintly of poached pears and polished wood. Evelyn stepped through the doors at exactly 11:58 a.m. She wore a charcoal wrap dress with a structured neckline and low heels. Her hair was up, simple, neat. But it was the necklace that made the room tilt. Gold and green fire sat against her collarbone like it had been forged for the light in that room. It didn't glitter. It ruled. She didn't pause at the entrance. She didn't need to. Conversations hiccuped as she walked past. A woman in a camel hair blazer actually lowered her sunglasses to stare. A man in cufflinks nudged his wife. A waiter nearly collided with a table corner. Evelyn didn't flinch. At the far end of the room, Harper was mid-laugh, champagne flute in hand. The second she saw Evelyn, she stopped cold. The mimosa hit her throat wrong. She coughed into her napkin, blinking hard. Noah reached over, concerned. She waved him off. Evelyn didn't approach her. She simply took her seat, table 3, near the window this time, and unfolded her linen napkin with the kind of quiet assurance that doesn't require permission. Minutes later, Mrs. Chanot glided by. "My dear, that necklace," she breathed. "It's exquisite. Where on earth did you find something so refined?" Evelyn looked up with a mild smile. "Oh, it's been with me a long time. Just never found the right occasion." "Stunning," the woman said again. "Absolutely stunning." Evelyn nodded graciously. "Thank you." Soon others followed. Compliments floated across the table like petals. The compliments weren't cloying, they were reverent. No one asked if it was real. They knew. Harper appeared 5 minutes later, smile stretched tight. "Grandma," she said, tone polite but pinched, "can I talk to you for a second, in private?" Evelyn stood slowly and followed her into the side corridor near the coat room. Harper turned as soon as the door closed behind them. "Where did that even come from?" "The necklace?" Evelyn asked calmly. "From someone who doesn't need to be reminded what she's worth." Harper's mouth opened, then closed. "I just mean," she tried again, "you said you weren't going to go overboard. I thought we agreed." "No," Evelyn said gently. "You asked." "And I complied, then. This isn't your wedding. It's brunch. I thought I'd accessorize." "It's a distraction." Evelyn stepped closer. "To whom?" Harper blinked, as if the light in the room had shifted. Look, I didn't mean anything by it yesterday," she said quickly. "I was nervous. Everything had to be perfect. I didn't want anyone to feel out of place. And yet, somehow I did," Evelyn said, voice even. The silence pressed in. Somewhere behind the door, cutlery clinked, and laughter rose. Evelyn didn't press. She simply let the pause breathe. Harper spoke again, quieter this time. "It's beautiful." "Yes," Evelyn agreed. Another beat passed, then Evelyn turned toward the door. "I'm going to enjoy the rest of brunch. You should too. It's a lovely room, once you stop worrying about who's in the center of it." She didn't wait for a response. As she walked back into the dining room, she felt it, not power, exactly, but weight, presence. Not the kind that demands a microphone, the kind that silences a room without needing to raise its voice. She took her seat. Across the table, someone asked, "Is it antique?" Evelyn smiled. "It's timeless." Harper returned 5 minutes later, her posture stiffer, her smile a little more forced. And though no one said it outright, something in the air had shifted. The brunch no longer belonged to the bride. It belonged to the woman who remembered what it meant to be seen. The pen in Evelyn's hand felt heavier than it should have, not in weight, but in consequence. Her estate attorney, Bernard Klein, leaned forward slightly, peering through frameless glasses as if he might catch hesitation flickering behind her eyes. "You're certain?" he asked. "This is a significant change, Evelyn." They sat in a polished corner office overlooking downtown. Sunlight caught on the glass shelves behind him, glinting off legal plaques and a photo of his golden retriever in a graduation cap. Evelyn nodded once, her expression unreadable. "Yes, I'm certain." Bernard flipped back to the previous page. "The trust adjustment reflects Harper receiving just the tea set? It belonged to my mother. She used it twice a year and never once for company. It's exactly the right kind of inheritance for someone who thinks appearances matter more than intention." Bernard gave a small cough, half discomfort, half acknowledgement. "And the rest? Property, liquid assets, jewelry?" Evelyn folded her hands. "Will go to the Evelyn Whitaker Foundation for Educational Equity. Endowment to be used for women aged 18 to 30, first-generation college students, low-income backgrounds." Bernard tilted his head. "I didn't realize you were setting up a foundation." "I wasn't, until someone made me remember who actually deserves opportunity." He marked a note with careful penmanship. Then, softer, She's your only grandchild. Evelyn's fingers twitched at that just once, then steadied. She was also my only ungrateful one. Bernard sat back in his chair and gave a slow nod. I'll have a draft for review by end of week. There's just one more thing. He slid a slim, ivory envelope from his drawer and placed it in front of her. The legacy letter. Most people leave one. Optional, but meaningful. Evelyn looked at it a long moment before tucking it into her purse. I'll write it tonight. At home, the light was falling in long orange ribbons across the dining table. Evelyn sat with her tea cooling beside her and the envelope open in front. She didn't write right away. Instead, she stared at the blank page and let the weight of the years settle around her. There was no rage left. That had evaporated somewhere between ballet tuition and whispered insults at brunch. When she finally began writing, it wasn't a reprimand. It was a reckoning. Harper, if you're reading this, you've learned what I did. You'll be angry or hurt, likely both. But I want to be clear. This isn't revenge. It's reality. I raised you out of grief, out of love, out of a belief that effort would equal gratitude. I taught you that family was built, not born, that resilience was its own kind of inheritance, but somewhere along the way, you began to believe the world owed you beauty without backbone. You asked me to shrink, to edit myself for your image, and you whispered what you meant loud enough for me to hear. I didn't punish you. I released you from my savings, from my silence, from the idea that love means never holding someone accountable. The foundation you no longer benefit from will change lives. I hope that still means something to you. One day it might. Until then, I wish you clarity and one honest friend. Grandma Evelyn capped the pen and folded the letter with slow care. She slid it into the envelope, sealed it, and wrote a single word on the front in elegant cursive: truth. She placed it in her fireproof file, nestled between her living will and deed of ownership. Then she stood and walked to the kitchen, pulled the kettle off the stove, and poured herself a fresh cup. No shaking, no regret, just resolve, clean and quiet. Across the room, her phone vibrated once on the countertop. A new message lit the screen. Harper, you looked different today, kind of powerful. I don't know what's changed. Evelyn didn't respond. Instead, she turned the phone face down, lifted her cup, and walked into the golden light of her living room. The final sip tasted like jasmine and freedom. Harper refreshed the student portal again. Payment declined. Balance. Due. $18,432. She blinked, then laughed, a nervous, ugly sound that echoed off the marble kitchen countertops. She tried the other browser, tried incognito mode, tried the app. Same result. Across the breakfast island, Noah sat scrolling through emails with one AirPod in, sipping oat milk coffee. Harper's voice cut across the room. Did you move anything out of the tuition account? He looked up, brow furrowed. What? Number Y? The semester charge bounced. Noah set his phone down slowly. That's not possible. Harper's mouth tightened. I thought so too. She paced across the living room, grabbed her own phone, and tapped Evelyn's name. It rang 3 times before her grandmother answered. Hello? Hi, Harper said too brightly. It's me. I know, Evelyn replied. A pause. Then Harper dove in. There's been a weird issue with my tuition payment. It bounced. From the account you usually fund. I think maybe something's wrong on the bank's end? No, Evelyn said calmly. Nothing's wrong. Harper stopped pacing. Then why? Evelyn's voice was clear, smooth. You once told me not to look so poor in your wedding photos. Harper's stomach dropped. What? Evelyn continued. So I adjusted my finances accordingly. I didn't think you'd want my poverty showing up on your tuition statement either. Harper was quiet for too long. Then, you can't be serious. I've never been clearer. But this is different. Harper sputtered. School isn't... It's not the same. I agree. Education is an investment. So is self-respect. I've chosen to invest in the one that yields something lasting. Harper's breath caught. Her voice sharpened. You're punishing me. No, Evelyn replied, soft but unmoved. I'm finally listening to you. She ended the call before Harper could answer. That evening, Harper sat at the dining table, face pale beneath her foundation. The necklace photo from the brunch was still open on her phone, Evelyn glowing like someone who had remembered herself. Noah stood near the window, arms crossed. "So let me get this straight," he said. "You insulted the woman who's paid your tuition for 4 years, at your wedding, in front of her own family." "I didn't insult her. You told her not to look poor." "I was nervous," Harper snapped. "She's old-fashioned. I didn't want anyone to think—" "To think what?" he cut in. "That the woman who paid for your ballet shoes and sat tutor and laptop might ruin your Instagram shots?" Harper flinched. Noah grabbed his keys. "I'm going out." "To where?" He stared at her like he didn't recognize the question. "Anywhere that doesn't sound like entitlement." Later that week, a call came from someone Harper hadn't heard from in over 2 years. Her mother. The voice was familiar, bitter like burned toast. "I heard what happened," she said. "You always were your father's daughter. Too proud to ask, too proud to apologize." "I don't need a lecture," Harper muttered. "No, you need a bridge. You need to fix this before she cuts you out of everything." "She already has." "Then you grovel." "I've had to before." Harper's mouth opened, then closed. Her mother continued, slower now. "You may think you're better than me, but if Evelyn stops caring, that legacy doesn't skip to you. It just stops." Harper stared at the tea set on the mantel, the one Evelyn had given her as a teenager. It looked different now. Small, empty. Back in her apartment, Evelyn sat on the edge of her bed, sorting through a folder labeled Foundation, Drafts and Correspondence. Letters from young women filled the file. Applicants, thank you notes, stories. Real hunger, real drive, real worth. She ran her fingers over one, handwritten in pencil. "No one in my family believes I'll finish college, but I'm going to prove them wrong." Evelyn smiled, faint and tired. Then her phone buzzed again. "Harper, 9:43 p.m. You can't just cut me off. You raised me. I deserve more than a tea set." Evelyn stared at the message, then opened her contacts. She didn't delete Harper, but she moved the number from favorites to other. Then she turned off the phone, laid back on her pillow and whispered to the dark, "You were the child I raised, not the woman I would have chosen." And somewhere between the quiet and the truth, Evelyn finally slept soundly. The living room was quiet, bathed in the amber hush of late afternoon. Evelyn sat cross-legged on the floor, her back leaning against the bottom shelf of the bookcase, a quilt draped over her knees. A half-empty mug of black tea cooled beside her, untouched. Around her, spread like a paper memory map, lay 5 photo albums. The older ones had cracked bindings and gold foil edges worn down to gray. She opened the lavender one first, Harper's first birthday. Cake smeared across her cheeks like war paint. Evelyn remembered frosting that tasted like glue and the collapsing card table they borrowed from the neighbor. Next page, Harper in her tutu, all elbows and innocence, 7 years old, looking down at her slippers like she might float. Evelyn could still feel the burn in her calves from working a double shift the night before that recital. She'd eaten leftover toast in the break room that day, just so Harper could feel like the center of something. The photos blurred slightly as Evelyn blinked. She wiped her thumb against the page, not to clean it, but to touch it. There was no satisfaction here, no smugness, just sorrow rippling quietly beneath the skin. She flipped through more pages. Christmas mornings, science fair ribbons, a lost front tooth and a too large backpack on the first day of middle school. Evelyn had made every sandwich, stitched every hem, paid every overdue balance. And now Harper couldn't even bring herself to say, "I'm sorry," without first defending her insult. Evelyn closed the album gently. She stood, knees stiff, and crossed the room to the hall closet. From the top shelf she retrieved a smaller box, this one pale blue with silver corners. Inside, sealed letters, the deed to the house, and a black envelope marked, "Final donation in honor," in her own handwriting. She pulled it out. Later, she drove to the post office, stamped the envelope, and addressed it to the admissions office of an inner-city community college she had once visited as a guest speaker. Inside, a scholarship donation made in Harper's name. Recipient, TBD, first generation, female, demonstrated financial need, because the money didn't deserve to rot in bitterness, and the name, well, maybe someday it could mean something better than it did now. Evelyn's final stop that day was quieter. The cemetery sat on a hill just east of town, where the maples were already losing their color. She brought no flowers, only herself. She stood in front of the headstone, brushing a leaf off the top corner. Harold Whittaker, 1936 to 1999, still holding her hand. She let out a slow breath. She turned out just like her mother, Harold, Evelyn said aloud. Her voice didn't shake. Charmed by the superficial, sharp in all the wrong places. Looks like the girl I raised, but it's not her anymore. She sat on the small wooden bench beside the grave, fingers steepled in her lap. I kept thinking there was still time, to pull her back, to remind her who loved her before she knew how to be lovable. But I see it now. Love doesn't always redeem. The wind picked up slightly, lifting a strand of her hair. She closed her eyes. "I think I forgive her," she whispered, not because she asked, but because I want the space back inside myself. After a long silence, she stood and pressed her palm gently to the top of the headstone. "We did our best," she said, "even when it didn't look like enough." As she turned to leave, the sun dipped behind a bank of clouds, and everything around her softened. That evening, Evelyn placed the albums back on the shelf. She kept one photo out. Harper, at age 10, missing a tooth, hugging Evelyn's waist with fierce, unguarded joy. She pinned it on the fridge, not to remember who Harper had become, but who she once was, and maybe who someone else could be. Tomorrow, she would draft a welcome letter for the first scholarship recipient. Tonight, she simply poured one glass of wine, sat by the window, and watched the light fade without dread. Outside, the sky looked like old paper, folding into dusk. And for the first time in a long while, Evelyn didn't feel like a character left behind. She felt like a chapter closed. On purpose. The story hit the lifestyle column on a Wednesday. Grace in Green, the mystery matriarch who stole the show. Harper hadn't expected it, hadn't even known a photographer from the Registry Journal had been present, but there it was. A candid photo of Evelyn at the brunch, seated by the window, necklace catching the morning sun like fire caught mid-breath. Her smile was closed-lip, ped, inscrutable. Beneath the image, symbolic elegance, an understated rebuke to generational erasure. The caption made Harper's chest tighten. She threw her phone across the bed. 3 days earlier, she had posted a filtered photo of her in her wedding dress with the caption, "Not everyone at your table wants what's best for you. Protect your peace." 15 likes, mostly old high school acquaintances and 2 bridesmaids. The next post, 24 hours later, was sharper. "Family is sometimes just shared DNA and deeper wounds." That one got more traction. Enough for her cousin Lindsay to DM, "Everything okay? That about Evelyn?" She didn't respond. That evening, her Aunt Deb posted the brunch photo to Facebook with the caption, "Evelyn Whittaker, always the class act. What a presence." Comments flooded in. "She looks like royalty. That necklace and that poise, wow. Harper's lucky to have her." No one mentioned the bride. Harper scrolled through them in silence, curled in bed with her laptop burning hot against her thighs. She opened her DMS to find one from Noah's mother. "We'd love to know more about Evelyn's family story. She was truly the heart of the weekend." Harper slammed the lid shut. Noah found her in the kitchen an hour later, sitting at the table with her head in her hands, her tea untouched. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "Doesn't look like it." Harper's eyes were rimmed with red. "Everyone thinks she's some kind of saint." Noah leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Maybe she is." She stared at him. "She wore a necklace, Harper. You were the one who made it into a war." Harper bristled. "It wasn't about the necklace." "Then what was it about?" She didn't answer. Noah pushed away from the counter, quieter now. "You said something awful to her, and you still haven't apologized." "Not really." "She humiliated me." "You did that part all by yourself." He left the kitchen without another word. Harper sat alone in the echo of her own indignation. At Evelyn's apartment, the mood was light. She stirred a pot of lentil soup while the radio hummed something old and warm. On her side table lay a printed copy of the column. She hadn't posted anything, hadn't commented, hadn't even told anyone she'd seen it. She didn't need to. Truth, she'd decided, didn't need punctuation. Her phone buzzed. Another message from someone in the family, asking if she was okay with all this attention. She texted back a single word, unbothered, then set the phone down and returned to her soup. The real shift came the following Sunday at a small family lunch hosted by a second cousin. Harper arrived late. She wore designer sunglasses indoors and barely spoke. When Evelyn's name came up, someone complimenting her recent scholarship donation, Harper rolled her eyes. "She's loving this," she muttered. "All this praise. She's making it about her." Her cousin Caleb raised an eyebrow. Or maybe people are just finally noticing her. Silence. Sharp and immediate. Even the kids stopped playing. Harper stood abruptly and walked out. No one followed. Later that night, Harper stared at her screen again. No new comments, no sympathy, just her own post, now echoing back like a shout into a canyon. Family is sometimes just shared DNA and deeper wounds. This time, even she didn't hit like. She closed the app and looked at her reflection in the dark window. For the first time, she didn't look triumphant, or beautiful, or even angry, just alone. She picked up her phone and hovered over Evelyn's number. Then she set it back down and turned off the light. The screen lit once more, even in darkness. Incoming message. Unknown sender. I saw the column. Evelyn looked like someone who finally remembered she belonged. Harper stared at it, jaw tight. And the silence in the room wasn't peaceful. It was closing in. It was nearly dusk when the knock came. 3 soft raps, then one decisive one. Like hesitation wrapped in resolve. Evelyn set down her gardening gloves and wiped her hands on the apron she wore only for pulling weeds and grief. She opened the door expecting a neighbor or perhaps another scholarship thank you letter misplaced by the postal service. Instead, Noah stood on the stoop, hair tousled, suit jacket slung over one arm. "Mr. Chanot?" Evelyn said, surprised but not unsettled. "Noah, please," he replied, voice low. "Do you have a few minutes?" She stepped aside without a word. He followed her into the kitchen, eyes scanning the space like it might reveal something sacred. A pot of stew simmered on the stove, and the necklace was nowhere in sight. Just Evelyn. And her quiet. Noah stayed standing. "I didn't come on Harper's behalf." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "Then whose?" "My own." He let out a breath. "I've watched her unravel. She's cruel when she's scared. You probably knew that before I did." Evelyn poured 2 glasses of water and handed him one. He didn't drink. "She's been saying awful things." He continued. "To family. To me. And when I try to talk to her about it, she just lashes out. She says you abandoned her. That you embarrassed her on purpose." "I wore a necklace," Evelyn said plainly. "She called that war." Noah nodded. "I know. That's why I'm here. I guess I just need to ask, is there anything I can do to fix this? Not for her. For you." Evelyn took a slow sip, then set her glass down. "This was never about just one insult, Noah. It was about erosion. Years of little reminders that my usefulness had an expiration date." He looked down at the floor. "She always said you were the strong one." "I was," Evelyn said, "until she taught me how much strength costs when it's never returned." A silence settled between them. Respectful. Weighty. "I'm sorry," he said. And for the first time, she could tell he meant it. Not just for her, but for himself. "I don't need your apology," she said softly. "But I'm glad you brought it anyway." He nodded again, slowly, then turned to leave. When the door clicked shut behind him, Evelyn stood in the hallway a moment longer, unsure if the air had changed, or if she had. 2 days later, an envelope appeared in her mailbox. No return address. Legal stationery. She opened it slowly, brow furrowing as she scanned the pages. Divorce petition. Harper Whitaker, Chanot, vs. Noah D. Chanot, filed. Not served in error. Meant for someone else. An attorney, perhaps. But it had found its way to Evelyn's door. She sat on the edge of the couch and reread the names. The pages trembled in her hand, but not from shock. This wasn't vindication. This wasn't pleasure. This was the sound of a final rope snapping from its post. Harper was unraveling, not because of what Evelyn had done, but because of everything she hadn't learned. The necklace hadn't broken her, the truth had. And now she was losing everything. But not because Evelyn had taken it, because she had never learned how to hold it. Evelyn tucked the petition back into the envelope and slid it into a drawer marked unsent letters. She didn't want it lying around, but she didn't want to forget it either. Later that night, she wrote a single sentence in her journal. Sometimes innocence is just entitlement waiting to mature, and below it, "Goodbye, baby girl. Not because you broke me, but because you wouldn't stop." She closed the book and turned out the light. Tomorrow she would call the college foundation about a second scholarship. Tonight she would sleep without waiting for anyone's apology, and just before sleep took her, she whispered, "Let the rest come undone. I won't chase it." The ballroom was a bloom of crystal and navy, light catching off chandeliers like falling stars. Laughter sparkled across the tables, but the buzz shifted the moment Evelyn entered. She didn't walk in. She arrived. The necklace, gold and green fire, rested against her collarbone like it had never belonged anywhere else. Her black gown was tailored but unshowy, cinched just enough to declare that elegance didn't ask permission. No escort, no announcement. Just presence. Whispers rippled down rows of philanthropists, educators, and donors. That's her. That's Evelyn Whitaker. At the top of the program, beneath the gala's gold-stamped mission statement, Equity, Access, Legacy, was her name. Evelyn sat alone at her table, not because she'd been excluded, but because she hadn't needed to anchor herself to anyone. She read the night's agenda without glasses. Her place card was edged in silver. Her cutlery gleamed. When it was time, the MC's voice softened as he introduced her. Tonight's keynote speaker redefines what legacy looks like. Not as inheritance, but as intention. Applause rose, then hushed. Evelyn stood. No notes, no podium, just a woman walking toward a microphone like it was just another stove to stand at, another room to command without noise. She began, calm and unhurried. "I'm not here because I have money. I'm here because I decided to stop giving it to people who mistook silence for love." A murmur swept the room. "I was told not to make a scene, not to dress too well, not to distract. But legacy, real legacy, isn't about staying small to make others comfortable. It's about standing still long enough to be seen." She let that settle, then continued. "I gave my savings to women I'll never meet, because they're hungry, and not just for food, for change, for dignity, for something they haven't yet been told they're allowed to want." The room was silent, riveted. "I wore this necklace once before," she added, touching it lightly, "to remind someone I love what worth looks like." She didn't understand. That's all right. Some people only learn the shape of love by its absence. No tremble, no tremor, just a full, earned voice. "Tonight, I wear it for myself." A pause. Then, "And I leave here without bitterness. Because letting go doesn't make me less, it makes me mine again." She stepped back. A heartbeat of silence, then a standing ovation. Flashes popped from cameras, but Evelyn didn't pose. She nodded politely, then returned to her seat. Her soup had cooled, but she didn't mind. She'd been warm for the first time in years. The article went live the next morning. A new kind of matriarch, Evelyn Whitaker and the quiet power of saying enough. Photos, quotes, reactions, her inbox filled with invitations, panels, interviews, podcasts. But Evelyn didn't rush to reply. She made tea, she watered her plants, she hung her coat gently in the closet. By noon, her voicemail blinked. She sat in her reading chair and pressed play. Harper's voice came through, thinner than usual. "Hi, it's me. I saw your speech. You looked different, powerful. I think I made a mistake. I guess I just wanted to say that." Silence on the line. Then, "I hope you'll call me back." Evelyn didn't delete the message, but she didn't respond. She saved it to a folder titled Unopened Doors. Then she stood, walked to her vanity, and placed the necklace in its velvet case. She didn't lock it. She didn't need to. The next gala didn't matter. This one had been hers. As she drew the blinds and let the late light curl across her face, Evelyn thought, some things don't need applause to echo. The room dimmed, but inside her, something had just begun to shine. It was raining when the knock came, not a dramatic storm, but a soft, steady rain, the kind that blurs window panes and slows time. Evelyn stood at the sink, drying the last of the teacups when she heard it. 3 knocks. No pause, no hesitation. She opened the door. Harper stood there, soaked from the shoulders down, hair clinging to her temples, makeup half dissolved. She looked like someone who had lost the thread and followed it all the way back to where it began. "Can I come in?" Harper asked, already shivering. Evelyn didn't speak. She simply stepped aside. Harper stepped over the threshold like it was a border she wasn't sure she still had a passport for. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, as if expecting change, or hoping for it. The necklace was gone. There was no fireplace, just books, light, and that same unbearable stillness. "Sit," Evelyn said softly. "I'll put on tea." They sat across from each other, china between them, steam rising like breath that had finally calmed. "I need to talk to you," Harper began, voice thin as the rain outside. "About everything." Evelyn didn't nod, didn't encourage, just waited. Harper fidgeted with her sleeve. I wasn't thinking. I said things I didn't mean. About the wedding. About you. And the money. And the necklace. And God, I was awful." Evelyn lifted her teacup, sipped. "I need help," Harper said suddenly. The words dropped like marbles. "Noah's gone. The tuition's overdue. The apartment's too expensive. I'm barely holding anything together." Evelyn set her cup down. "And I know I don't deserve it. But you've always been there. Always. You were more of a mother than my own. You loved me when no one else did. Please, can you just undo what you did? The will, the trust. I'll make it up to you." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. Not cold, not warm, still. "I didn't do anything to you, Harper," she said quietly. "I just stopped doing everything for you." Harper blinked, stunned. Evelyn continued, calm and unwavering. "You asked me not to look poor. And so I stopped living as though I owed anyone proof of my sacrifice." Tears welled in Harper's eyes. "But I didn't mean—" "I know exactly what you meant. And that's why it mattered." Harper covered her mouth. A sound caught in her throat, half sob, half apology. Evelyn reached for a folder on the nearby table and opened it. Inside, glossy pamphlets, lined spreadsheets, and typed letters. A logo across the top, the Evelyn Whitaker Scholarship for First-Generation Women. "This is where my legacy lives now," she said, "in women who still know how to say thank you with effort." Harper stared at it, hollowed. "So that's it? I'm just out?" Evelyn looked at her, really looked. "You're not out," she said softly. "You've just stopped walking in." Harper broke then, shoulders heaving, hands shaking. She cried the way people do when they realize they are not the center of the story anymore. Maybe never were. "I thought you'd always be there," Harper said between sobs. "I was," Evelyn said, "longer than I should have been." They sat in the heavy quiet of unfixable things. Evelyn didn't reach across the table. She didn't promise reconsideration. She poured another cup of tea. After a while, Harper wiped her eyes with the edge of her sleeve and stood. "I guess I don't know what to say." Evelyn folded the folder closed. "Then maybe it's time you start listening instead." Harper opened the door without another word. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the street was still soaked, like memory that hadn't quite dried. That night, Evelyn tucked the scholarship folder into her desk drawer. She played Harper's voicemail one last time, then deleted it. Tomorrow, she would meet the foundation director to finalize a second round of recipients. But tonight, she sat at her kitchen table and whispered one last thing to the empty room. "Love doesn't always leave the door open." Then she got up and locked it. The sound of the espresso machine hissed in the corner, while Evelyn sat quietly at the corner table of Café Mercer, her reading glasses perched on the bridge of her nose, a red pen in one hand. Across from her, Maya hunched over a scholarship essay draft, chewing the end of her pencil in deep concentration. She was 19, smart, blunt, thin as a wire, with a head full of natural curls always pinned back like she didn't have time to be bothered. Maya had been in 6 foster homes by 16, no parents, no college fund, but she had a sharpness that Evelyn recognized instantly, not bitterness, but edge. An edge honed by survival, not entitlement. "I fixed the structure," Maya said, pushing the paper forward, "but the last paragraph's still clunky." Evelyn glanced over the new draft, underlining one phrase. "You gave me a future I didn't know I could want." "That doesn't sound clunky to me. It sounds earned." Maya shrugged, trying to play it cool. "You'd know, I guess." Evelyn smiled faintly. "I suppose I would." 3 days later, Evelyn sat again in Bernard Klein's office, the same silver-cornered folder open in front of her. The document inside wasn't long, but it was deliberate. "Updating the trust again?" Bernard asked, surprised. "Yes," Evelyn said, her voice crisp. "Add a new beneficiary. Maya Renee Foster." Bernard arched a brow. "Relation?" Evelyn paused. Then, "Chosen." He didn't ask more. He simply adjusted the file, typed in the amendment, and slid the pen across the desk. This time, Evelyn didn't hesitate. Her signature was firm. The video came 2 days later. Evelyn found it waiting in her inbox, subject line, "Something for you." She clicked. The camera was shaky, propped on a stack of books. Maya sat in a dorm bed, laundry piled behind her, hoodie 2 sizes too big. "Hi, Evelyn," she said, trying not to look directly into the lens. "So, I know I'm supposed to write a thank you letter or whatever, but I wanted to say it to your face, even if it's just a screen." A pause. Then, "I don't know what you saw in me. Honestly, sometimes I still don't. But when I got that acceptance email and saw what you'd done, I started crying in the middle of a gas station, like ugly crying, the kind that makes strangers worry." She laughed. Then her face softened. "No one's ever chosen me before. Not like that, not without wanting something." She leaned in closer. "You told me I mattered, and not just in a pity way. You gave me roots, a last name to borrow, a reason to walk a little taller." Her voice wavered. "You're my real grandma. I don't care about blood." The screen shook as she reached to turn it off. "Thank you. I love you. Bye." Evelyn didn't cry immediately. She watched the video twice, once as a woman, once as a grandmother, and then, finally, the tears came. Not loud, not performative, just quiet tremors down her cheeks as her hands pressed against her lips. It wasn't loss. It was arrival. The text came just after dinner. "Harper, 6:19 p.m. How dare you replace me? You think she'll love you more? You think you can buy loyalty now? Harper, 6:20 p.m. You're pathetic. Don't think I don't know what you're doing. I'm still your family, like it or not." Evelyn read both messages without flinching. She opened her settings, scrolled to Harper's name, and pressed block. It took less than a second. The air in the room shifted. Not relief, release. Later that night, Evelyn replayed Maya's video again, letting the glow of the screen light her face. She paused it at the end, Maya's face frozen mid-laugh, eyes bright, future wide. She took a screenshot and printed it. Then she pinned it next to the photo of 10-year-old Harper on her refrigerator. Not in comparison, but in peace. 2 girls, 2 legacies, one chosen in memory, one chosen in hope. Down the hall, Evelyn's phone buzzed once more. A blocked number. No voicemail. She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered aloud to the quiet house, "Love is not a birthright. It's an inheritance you have to keep earning." And as she turned off the lights, the house didn't feel empty. It felt full. The morning was quiet, touched with the soft smell of salt drifting in from somewhere far beyond the cul-de-sac. A moving truck idled in Evelyn's driveway, its engine humming like a lullaby on the edge of something new. Inside the house, Sunlight slanted through the living room windows, painting stripes across half-packed boxes and the faded outline of furniture long since moved. The walls looked bare but not abandoned, like they'd been thanked before being released. Evelyn stood by the window, one hand resting lightly on the frame, her breath slow and even. She wasn't nostalgic, not in the way people usually meant it. She didn't ache. She observed. Behind her, two movers wrapped her final armchair in thick gray pads. One glanced her way. "You sure you want us to take all of it, ma'am?" "All but one," Evelyn said gently, pointing to a small side table in the corner. On it sat a silver frame, simple, worn, just slightly tilted from years of soft use. Inside it, Harper, age 10, gap-toothed and radiant, arms wrapped around Evelyn's waist like the world had never heard the word betrayal. The mover nodded and left it alone. Evelyn crossed the room and picked up the photo. The glass was smudged with old fingerprints. She wiped it clean with the corner of her sweater. Then she smiled, not in sorrow, not in longing, in gratitude. Outside, the neighbors gathered one by one. Some stood awkwardly at the foot of her drive. Others came with coffee cups in hand, offering that blend of small-town kindness and quiet envy reserved for people brave enough to start over. "Big change," Mrs. Talcott from next door said. "Big enough," Evelyn agreed. "You'll miss the garden." "I'll miss knowing I don't have to tend it anymore." There was a pause, then laughter. Mr. Jenkins helped her carry the last labeled box, kitchen, keep, to the front step. "Where you headed?" "Coastal place," Evelyn said. "Second floor, no lawn, no attic, just air and quiet and a walking path near the dunes." He gave a low whistle. "Sounds like freedom." "It does," she said, "because it is." That afternoon, a white panel van from the local women's shelter arrived. Evelyn stood with the director, a kind-eyed woman named Dana, as movers loaded the last of the furniture. "You're sure about the whole bedroom set?" Dana asked. "It's beautiful." "I've slept enough nights trying to remember who I used to be," Evelyn replied. "Let someone else wake up with a fresh start." Dana squeezed her hand, unsure what to say. Evelyn smiled. "It's all right. This isn't about loss. It's about lightness." By sunset, the house echoed. No more rugs, no more clinking dishes, no more history in the corners. Evelyn took one final walk through. She paused at the doorway to the room that had once been Harper's, back when ballet slippers hung from drawer knobs and posters of stargazing charts covered the walls. Now, just hardwood. Dust catching golden light. She didn't cry. She touched the frame with her fingertips. Once. Then she turned off the light. The coastal apartment was smaller, yes, but it was also quieter in the right ways. Her framed photo of Harper went on the narrow bookshelf beside her reading chair. Maya's printed screenshot went just below it. Two timelines, one truth. She'd loved fully, and she'd let go properly. That night, with only half the boxes unpacked, Evelyn made a cup of mint tea, stepped out onto her small balcony, and watched the waves in the distance shift against moonlight. No noise, no messages, just the hum of her own choosing. She raised her mug in a small, silent toast to no one in particular, and in that still moment, Evelyn didn't miss the house. She missed nothing. She had brought everything that mattered with her, and left the rest behind on purpose. Back inside? Her phone buzzed once. A new name on the screen. Maya, 7:41 p.m. "I aced my first midterm. You're the first person I wanted to tell." Evelyn smiled. She typed one sentence in return. "Evelyn, that's the beginning of everything, sweetheart." Then she set the phone aside and let the night settle around her. Not empty, just new. The envelope was thick, hand-addressed, and edged in a shade of cream Evelyn recognized from Harper's old stationery. No return address, no decorative flourish. Just her name, centered in pen she knew wasn't cheap, because Harper had always believed quality paper could soften what was written on it. Evelyn didn't open it right away. She placed it on the kitchen counter, beside a bowl of clementines and her newest gardening book. She made tea. She fed the cat next door, who'd started visiting uninvited. She watered the 2 pots of rosemary on the windowsill. Then, finally, she peeled the seal back with the edge of a butter knife and slid the pages out. 4 of them, written in Harper's familiar, curving script. The first paragraph began with an apology, over-polished but sincere in its effort. The second unraveled. "I think I tried to outgrow you," Harper had written. "Not because I didn't love you, but because I didn't know how to be enough for someone who made sacrifice look effortless. I felt small next to you, and instead of learning from that, I tried to turn it against you. I dressed it in ambition, I fed it pride, and I let it make me cruel." Evelyn read the line twice, then once more, not to find the wound, but to confirm the diagnosis. There was no manipulation this time, no demand, no plea to reverse decisions. Just the lopsided echo of someone who'd finally run out of ways to rewrite history in her favor. "I thought control would make me powerful," had the letter continued. "But I confused silence with superiority. I see that now. I don't know if it's too late to matter. But I needed you to know. I remember who you were to me. I remember who I used to be around you." Evelyn reached the end. The signature was shaky. No demands, no threats, no revisions to the will requested. Just, "Love you. Still. Maybe always. Harper." She folded the letter back along its original creases, sat in the quiet, let the weight of it settle. Not as guilt, not as grief, as recognition. She didn't cry, not because she felt nothing, but because she no longer needed release. Instead, she walked to her desk, opened the bottom drawer, and slid the letter into a folder labeled Past. Not family, not regrets, just what it was. Then she pulled out a blank card from the same drawer. White. Simple. No gilded edge. She wrote with a fountain pen she used for clean boundaries and final truths. "Harper, thank you for finally saying it. I still wish you well. E." She didn't add love. She didn't add grandma. She sealed it with tape, not wax. At the post office, she handed it over to the clerk without ceremony. When the woman at the counter asked, "Do you need a receipt?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "No," she said. "I just needed to let it go." That night, she didn't mention the letter to Maya during their call. They talked about coursework and deadlines and a boy in Maya's sociology class who'd started showing up early just to share her bench. "I think he's pretending to like Nietzsche," Maya laughed. "It's kind of sweet." Evelyn laughed too, real and brief and surprised by its own lightness. After the call, she poured herself a small glass of wine and stood by the open balcony door, letting the coastal air roll over her shoulders. She didn't wonder whether Harper would write again. She didn't need closure. She'd already built the life that came after it. Still, before bed, she did something unexpected. She lit a small candle, the kind Harper used to pick out for her on Mother's Day, back when the love had been untested and uncomplicated. The scent was linen and lemon, clean, sharp, honest. And for the first time in a long while, Evelyn said it aloud, not into the phone, not to a room, but to the woman she'd once raised. "May you grow better than you were." Then she blew out the flame, and didn't look back. The banquet hall smelled faintly of gardenias and fresh linen, the kind of scent chosen by people who curated not just events, but the memory of them. Round tables were draped in ivory, gold place cards set with precision. On each chair, a folded brochure with the words, "The Evelyn Whittaker Scholarship for First-Generation Women, Annual Recognition Gala." Soft jazz played from an unseen quartet. Laughter floated in clumps. Nervous energy, first-time gowns, borrowed heels. Young women in blazers too stiff and hearts too wide. At the front of the room, beneath a suspended arrangement of white roses, Maya stood behind the microphone in a pale blue jumpsuit, her curls pulled back but rebelliously loose around her ears. "I wasn't supposed to be here," Maya began, voice steady but filled with quiet fire. "Statistically, I shouldn't have made it to college, definitely not to this stage." Laughter rippled gently. She went on, "But someone chose to see me before I looked the part. Someone believed in the chapters I hadn't written yet. That someone is Evelyn Whittaker." Applause. Strong. Earnest. Maya turned, hand outstretched, and Evelyn rose from her seat at table 2, not fast, not hesitant, just deliberate. She wore a navy silk dress and a brooch in place of the necklace. Her hair was pulled into a low twist, and her expression was composed yet tender. As she stepped up to the podium, her eyes scanned the room instinctively, out of habit, not expectation. And then she saw her, Harper, near the back, partially hidden behind a pillar, wearing black. No expression, just there. Evelyn did not pause. She did not nod. She did not break. She simply returned her gaze to Maya. "Thank you for that," Evelyn said into the mic, the applause fading. "But I don't stand here because I gave anything. I stand here because I finally stopped giving it to the wrong people." A stir moved through the room, not scandalous, not cruel, just real, clear. "I used to believe legacy was what you left behind in bloodlines and heirlooms, but I've learned it's what you build in courage and consequence." She looked across the audience, not past Harper, but through her. "I gave this scholarship a name because names matter, but I gave it a soul because women like Maya are more than data points. They're possibility. They are the people we should have been protecting all along." No script, no dramatics, just steady, surgical truth. When people ask me what made me start a foundation, I tell them, it wasn't anger, it was clarity. I just finally realized where I could plant something that might actually grow. A pause, a beat of breath. "So here's what I'll leave behind. Not silver, not china, not debt disguised as tradition, but women with dreams, with drive, and with one person in their corner who never asked them to shrink first." The audience rose to its feet again, louder, this time not just out of respect, out of recognition. Evelyn stepped back. Maya hugged her once, tightly, and Evelyn allowed it. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with light. As she returned to her seat, Evelyn didn't look back at the corner Harper stood in. Because this time, she didn't need to measure whether the past approved. She was too busy honoring what came next. Outside, after the event, Evelyn stood beneath a street lamp, coat over one arm, the night warm for spring. A voice behind her, tentative. "You saw me in there, didn't you?" Evelyn didn't turn. "I saw everything I needed," she said. Then she stepped into her waiting car. And for the first time in Harper's adult life, she realized there were goodbyes you never got to answer, only to witness and live with. The ocean outside Evelyn's apartment breathed steadily against the shore, a sound so rhythmic it felt like memory itself, persistent, gentle, impossible to outrun. She stepped out of her heels first. The navy dress pooled across the floor of her bedroom like quiet dignity set down for the night. She reached for the necklace last, fingers brushing over each green-gold stone like keys on an old piano. Then she unfastened it. No ceremony, no farewell, just a final, silent acknowledgement. She walked it across the room and opened a velvet-lined box that hadn't been touched in weeks. Inside, the original tag, the appraisal receipt, a folded square of linen from the day of the wedding. She placed the necklace in its cradle, smoothing it flat with her thumb. Then she closed the lid. Not locked. Just done. In the corner of her bedroom sat a small desk with a leather-bound journal. She opened it to the last page, uncapped her pen, and let the words find her. It wasn't about money. It was about memory. And how quickly people spend it when they think you have more to give. She paused, then added beneath it, "Let this be the last time I write about her." She closed the journal gently, as if not to wake anything still asleep inside her. Later, wrapped in her shawl, Evelyn stood at the open balcony door, tea in hand, the sky shifting from lavender to flame. The ocean sparkled like it had something to say but wasn't in a hurry to be heard. For the first time in her life, she didn't wish she had someone to call, not even to share the moment, just to witness it. And then, 3 knocks at the door, not rushed, not panicked, just sure. She opened it. Maya stood there in sandals and a college sweatshirt, holding a takeout bag and a book. "Didn't want to eat alone," she said. "Thought maybe you didn't either." Evelyn stepped aside without hesitation. They ate on the couch, barefoot and quiet, the book unopened on the table beside them. After dinner, Maya curled her legs beneath her and stared out the window. "You ever wish you could go back?" she asked, voice low. Evelyn shook her head once. Number? But I used to wish someone else would. Maya looked at her. You mean Harper? I mean all the versions of her I raised. Silence stretched between them, but not uncomfortably. I think that's over now, Evelyn added. Because of tonight? No, Evelyn said softly. Because of now. When the dishes were washed and Maya had gone, hugging her once, longer than necessary but not longer than welcome, Evelyn returned to the window. The sky had gone deep navy. The horizon swallowed the last trace of sun, but the ocean kept shimmering as if it didn't notice the light was gone. She pressed her hand to the glass, not for warmth, just to feel the present push back. Then she walked to her bedroom, opened her drawer, and pulled out a single photo. Harper, age 10, mid-laugh, hair frizzy from ocean wind. Evelyn looked at it for a long time. I release you, she whispered. Not to a ghost, not to grief, but to peace. Then she placed the photo in a box marked early years, slid it onto the highest shelf of the closet, and turned out the light. Before bed, she stood at the mirror in her nightgown and ran a comb through her hair, face still flushed from the long evening. She met her own eyes and gave the faintest, realest smile. I didn't need to look rich, she said aloud. I just needed to feel full. The wind pressed against the window like a promise. She turned off the lamp, and the room filled not with silence, but with stillness that chose her.